So you're going out to activate a park. If you've activated more than a few times, I'm pretty sure you've had at least one unsuccessful activation. I'm going to give you 10 tips to help increase your chances of success. Welcome to the House of Ham. I'm Bob WV7W, and in this episode, I'm going to give you 10 tips to help you have a successful POTA activation. And stick around until the end for a bonus tip. Now, a lot of times we just go out and hope for the best. And if the planets align, this can work. Also, if you have a lot of experience, you'll already know most of the things I'm going to talk about, and you'll probably already have your own strategies. This video is more tailored to those that are new to intermediate activators, but some are good reminders for those of us that are regulars. Tip number 1. Know the mode or modes you plan to use during your activation. Now, if you're like me, you probably have one mode you prefer to use. For me, that's CW, but maybe you are a sideband guy. Maybe you want to do FT8. You might be like Josh from Ham Radio Crash Course and routinely do all of them. You need to know what modes you're going to use, as that will help you with the next tip. And that is tip number 2, equipment selection. This is why the first thing you need to know is what modes you plan to operate. You want to make sure you have all the stuff you need to use that mode. If you're doing sideband, you need a mic. If you're doing CW, you need a key. Not that I've ever forgotten one of those. Watch this video where I did just that and had to do the activation on sideband. If you plan on doing FT8, you'll need a sound card interface, or if you have something like the IC705, just a USB cable. You will also need a computer to run WSJTX or whatever software you use to do digital modes. Depending on the rig you're bringing, you may need an external battery. Can you get by with this Bioenno 3 amp hour, or do you need a 20 amp hour like this one? The rig and the power levels will help determine that. So you need to know which rig or rigs you plan on using. Now, my go-to is my KX2, which has a built-in battery. But what if conditions suck? Do I want to use more power? Do I need to bring my FT891? What about antennas and coax? I like to have my antenna analyzer. This isn't critical, but speeds up the setup process. What about logging? Are you doing paper logs, or are you using something like an app on your phone like Polo? So how do we make sure we don't make a mistake like I did and leave something critical at home? This leads us to tip number 3, equipment checklist. Now, whether it's a paper checklist or maybe it's an app on your phone, it doesn't really matter so long as you ensure you have all the stuff you need to operate the way you want to. Now, I have typically done this as a mental checklist, but as I have proven, it doesn't always work out well. So in this case, do as I say, not as I do. Tip number 4, check the propagation. Don't read too much into this tip. I don't know that I would solely base a go, no-go decision on the propagation reports unless there's a severe solar storm, such as some of the recent coronal mass ejection events that we've had. During these events, you might as well stay home. But barring those, knowing the propagation is just one more tool in your bag. Do you want to go with a little more power? Maybe you need to look at only certain bands to operate. So where can you get this information? There are a lot of sources, but if you just go to QRZ, there's this little chart that gives you what you need to know. Now, there's a lot more to propagation and solar weather, but that is a topic for another video. I wanted to give you just enough for you to know what you are up against before you head out. Now, I've heard many hams say that the propagation reports were bad, but they actually did pretty well. You really won't know if you don't try. Tip number 5, decide which bands to use. Based on the propagation and the time of day, you'll probably have a good idea on which bands you want to try. My go-to band that I almost always start on is 20 meters, and it usually works out well for me. But you may have your favorite bands of your own. You need to know which bands you may want to use to make sure you have the right antennas so you can work them. You also want to keep your options open. Now, some people go to the park loaded for bear. I prefer to go a bit lighter, but you do you. Tip number 6, know your power level. Knowing what power level you plan to take is also good to know before you go. Look back at the propagation in your equipment arsenal and decide what you want to do. If you only use a 100-watt rig like the Yaesu FD891, you can pick your power on the fly. However, if you want to go lighter, you'll need to decide before you go. Tip number 7, antenna selection. This decision is not only driven by antennas you have in your disposal, but also your environment you'll be operating. Are there a lot of trees that you can hang an end fed? Do you need a vertical that doesn't require organic supports? You also need to know about the rules of the park that you're going to. Now, I've never had an issue with putting a ground spike in the ground at any of the parks I have gone to, but your mileage may vary. The end feds that I have are for QRP levels, so knowing the power handling of your antenna is important before you go. If you plan to run 100 watts, you need to make sure you have an antenna that can handle it. Tip number 8, antenna placement and configuration. This one goes hand in hand with the last one. If you're using a dipole or an end fed, you'll need to consider the bands you plan on using. And you'll need to decide how to place and configure antenna. Now let's say you want to do some 40 meter work. If you want to get those close-in contacts, you'll want it closer to the ground, either in a sloper or inverted V configuration. If you want to reach out a bit further, a vertical orientation will suit you better. The amount of time you have available is a driver as well. If you have all day to play around and experiment and try new things, do that. If you're strapped for time, you might want to go with methods you have tested and know work for you. Tip number 9, research the location. Now, this mostly only applies if this is a new park for you. But if you watch this video of mine, I went to do a park and found out after I got there that it wasn't yet open for the season. You need to know the times and the dates that your park is open. Now, even though you may get away with going to a park that is closed, it's outside the rules of POTA. We want to be good visitors to our park, so we don't give the ham radio community a bad name, which could easily damage our reputation and hurt our ability to do this great activity. You'll also want to know if there's tables available, or do you need to bring your own? You will want to find spots at the park that are away from heavy traffic activities that can cause you or other visitors problems. I like to find a spot away from a lot of people. Tip number 10, scheduling your activation. Now, this one really only works for CW and digital operators, as there's no way to have a sideband contact auto spot you like with CW and digital. Nothing worse than getting out to your location and realizing there is weak or no cell service, so you can spot yourself. If you schedule the activation before you go, the reverse beacon network will pick you up and will get you spotted on the POTA website. Now, finally, there's this one last bonus. Well, I don't know if I'd really call it a tip, but more of a consideration that you need to be aware of. And that is, even if you follow all the tips in this video, there's one thing that can make or break your chance at a successful activation. And that is luck. Even with all of the best planning, things can still go wrong. Maybe it's a contest weekend. Maybe the propagation looked good, but the reality is you're not getting out like you hoped. Maybe the weather goes bad, even though the forecast was favorable. Things happen. And don't let that put you off. Enjoy the ride. Even if you don't get a full 10 contacts for successful activation, still submit your logs so those that hunted you get credit. Remember that our activating efforts are nothing if we don't have those willing to hunt us. I hope you found this helpful and you get out there and operate from our wonderful parks and other sites within the program. If you have some tips that I may have missed, Or if you want to add to one of the things I already addressed, please leave a comment below so others can take advantage of it. Now, if I get enough of additional information, I may do a second video on down the road. Until next time, this is WV7W 73.